Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. This is now the third Victrix unboxing of the package of 5 that I had ordered from myself from kind of various different time periods. And this is, of course, the Norman Crossbowmen. This kit's been out for, I want to say, like a year and a half, something like that. So there are other reviews online. But I wanted this set for myself, and it's kind of cool. I'm in a place in my hobbying that I really don't need anything for any armies in particular. I just sort of pick up sets that interest me or look cool. So, and this one looks like it had a lot of leftover crossbow bits that might be useful with other sets as well. So I definitely wanted to pick this up. But yeah, it's been out for a little while, and I was curious in particular how some of these bits would kitbash with other Victrix sets, as we've done in prior unboxings together. Not just looking at the sprues, but I want to see how some of these bits interchange with, for example, their Vikings, the early Saxons set that we just got or unboxed together. I'm curious to see how some of these bits might go together with those. So we'll take a look at that at the end, as we've done a couple of times now. But first, let's crack it on open. Lovely package art, as always, for them. And I like how they have slightly different like background colors for different sets. I think, like, for example, I've been collecting these off on the sides, but you can see kind of side by side how everything has a slightly unique background color to it, which is helpful just for identification on a shelf. So that's cool. This is one that does not come with a command. The Normans, if you get their like Norman infantry set, does have a command set with it, but it doesn't appear that this one comes with a command. It's 36 models, 6 models per sprue, 6 sprues. So that's what we're looking at here. But I would wager, and I had a set of the Normans, but I don't have any that are still on the sprue. I would wager that the command for that would blend together with this just fine. So, as we've been doing, let me separate out one sprue for us to look at, and we can look at the instructions over here on the right as well. So let's take a look here. Now you can see this is one set where it looks like there are specific heads for specific bodies, and we've seen other examples from Victrix where if there are heads that are kind of interchangeable between a bunch of different bodies, they would have those off on the side on their own. However, here you can see basically it looks like, with the exception of this one here, there are 4 or 5 heads that are unique to every body. And there are some heads in here, the word that they used was Arabized, this one here, so I would imagine for like El Cid kind of style campaigns or games that you might be playing. So it's not a word I'm familiar with, but it makes sense what it means. So you can see some of those, for example, here. So some cool options, and we'll maybe refer back to this as we're going through the sprue here. But it looks like a neat kit in terms of options. We'll do a quick overview shot here. Again, there's 6 bodies per sprue. A couple of the bodies actually remind me of the Norman infantry set. These are generally, I want to say, less armored because there's only 2 unarmored bodies there in the center. Looks like 3 with chainmail, 1 with kind of padded armor on. Whereas the Norman infantry set was slightly more armored. And again, that set comes with a command sprue, whereas this one does not. But lots of crossover in terms of style. I can even just see from like the heads, what have you, that those 2 kits would blend together very nicely. So very cool. Again, bodies in the center, like we've been seeing from Victrix. And yeah, these are really, really good. Great work here. Again, all 6 bodies are completely different. This one is a separated one that looks like he's hunched over, at least from context clues there. I think that's what's happening. So this one attaches onto this body here, I think probably to make some kind of loading position, like he's stepping down. Maybe this one here, but again, we'll refer to the schematic here in just a moment. But you can see all the belts sculpted on. The detail is fantastic, as we've come to expect from Victrix. So you have 3 chainmailed bodies with slightly different style hauberk. And then this one is the padded armor variant, and then 2 completely unarmored guys. So yeah, excellent detail and sculpting there. Really, really nice. One thing that is of note that stands out to me anyway right away, and again, these are specifically designed to make crossbowmen. However, if you wanted to arm any of them with like a hand weapon, there are no hand weapon options on this sprue. Again, let me just back it up here for a second. So if you wanted some crossbowmen armed with like an axe or a sword, or like maybe like they've got a crossbow in one hand, they're pulling a sax knife or something out with the other hand, there are no hand weapon options within this set. Now, as I've said at the beginning and have been saying, this looks like it's going to blend perfectly with their Norman infantry set. So if you picked up this simultaneously with that, you would not only have a ton of body options, but you would also have hand weapon options to go with this set as well. But what it does come with in terms of equipment is a lot of crossbows is what you've got here. So again, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 crossbows for 6 bodies. And we can tell if I pull the schematic back in here before I do close-ups on the crossbows, you can tell they're in a lot of different, and yeah, here's our like hunched over pose with the 2 loading options. So one either placing a bolt in, or one pulling back the drawstring on the crossbow. But you can see lots of different options in terms of like aiming, loading, knocking bolts, things like that. So I think if you were blending this together with Norman infantry specifically, and we'll see how they kitbash perhaps with some other Victrix sets, I think it can give you a ton of options in terms of crossbowmen that you can build here. But let's take a look at some of the details on these crossbows. Kind of close up here. And yeah, really great sculpting here. So all 3 of these look like they're kind of in like an aiming pose. This one is in a semi-loading pose. Quite a number of hands that have bolts, like they're knocking a bolt in. Loading in, I see 1, 2, at least 3, which is neat. Looks like you can make a lot of dynamic poses here, which is very cool. Again, this one goes with the hunched over body. The design of the crossbows is all the same, it looks like, which is what I would expect anyway, because these, I imagine, would have been like semi-mass produced, unlike, for example, a sword. So I wouldn't expect to see lots of like flourish. But what it does offer is a great variety of poses options for the bodies that it comes with. Let's look at heads here too, because there's actually a ton of head options on here as well. So again, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down here, and that in part is because they have a whole separate, looks like down here where or some of them anyway, the Arabized heads is what they were describing them as. So you have 5 heads down here, 10, 14, 17, 18, yeah, like 26 heads, I think is what I'm counting here, for 6 bodies, which is an incredible amount of variety that you can achieve here. Let me give some details here. I actually panicked for a second because I thought this was like a dent. I keep saying that I've bought a lot of stuff from Victrix. Nothing's ever been like snapped or dented or broken or anything like that, despite the plastic packaging that it comes in. And I like hesitated for a second when I saw this because I thought it looked like something had kind of dented the face in here. But I pulled a couple more of the sprues over just to see if it was a one-off, and it's not. And what I realized is that I think this bolt goes in that guy's mouth. That's what that indentation is there for. And then when I pulled the schematic, you can see, here he is here. So that bolt is a separate piece that goes in the mouth there. And that's what that is indicating. But you can see very crisp details. And they weren't kidding when they say lots of head variants for Arabized heads. Which is in part what gives us so many different head options here, is that they've got variants for like Iberian campaigns. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 for those who are curious. I think 4, and 5, 6. To at least 6 Arabized head options per per sprue. Looks like maybe, I don't know if I double counted that. But yeah, a good amount of variety, all the same. Yeah, and really excellent sculpting here. But again, we have come to expect that. And some crossover again with their Norman infantry set stylistically. But I think too it would, if you wanted to take some of these heads and blend them in with the Norman infantry set, or vice versa, some like Norman style haircuts here, as we also see on the Norman infantry set. I'm kicking myself. I wish I had some of those still on the sprue that I could kind of juxtapose with this set. But I can, again, just tell you from experience that these two kits would blend together really, really well. Interesting, too, that they said so many of these are unique heads to certain bodies. And I'll take them at their word for that, but I actually, just from glancing at it, I think I disagree. Like, some of these seem like this H19 head. Like, if you look at the attachment points, because I've talked about this in a prior video, usually it's the attachment points that indicate, like, when something is unique to a body. But like, for example, like this is a good comparison. So this one has the neck sculpted on, whereas this one does not. So this one has a indentation where the head should go in. So it's easy to see, like, these heads would not go in this body, and then vice versa. However, this one, like, you can see the attachment point here, attachment point here, attachment point here. Like, certainly these two are, it looks like the exact same style of attachment point. So it seems like these heads should be semi-interchangeable. Same thing here, like this attachment point looks exactly the same as this attachment point. So I have to imagine, again, I know from looking at other sets that they deliberately set these up in such a way that you can't kind of shoot yourself in the foot and have one body with no eligible head option. So I think that's part of what they're doing here, is they're suggesting certain heads so that you don't, you know, kind of build yourself into a corner, so to speak. But it looks like some of them anyway, it might be due to like the way the head is leaning. So I'll play around a little bit with it at the build step to see if I can swap some of these heads that maybe they don't recommend. And again, I'm curious to see how some of these bits go onto other kits of theirs. Some sword options here that actually look very similar to the Vikings. And I'm wondering, I can't remember now if the Normans had the same style of swords as well, but these are your kind of traditional looking Dark Age swords. Very beautifully sculpted. I would say that this sculpting on the early armored Saxons that we saw is slightly improved from this in terms of like overall detail and like uniqueness of sculpt, because you can see that these, while not an exact copy of one another, like this one has bits sewn into the leather here. You can see this one has some intricacies down here, but these look very much more similar than, again, what we see on their newer sets, like the early armored Saxons, where like every single sword is completely unique. Lots of accessories, as you would expect with this set as well, again, in addition to like things like bolts. Some of these go with the heads, so these are like hoods that attach to the heads, and we saw that on the schematic. But in terms of accessories, we've got some quivers down here, bolt quivers of different styles that attach. Again, the bolt that I had mentioned previously, it looks like 1, 2, 3, I guess I would call it a Saxon knife, small knives. And some of these accessories, I know I've seen these on the Viking set, and that's not a demerit in any way, because these are like cool bits, but I think that's where these are pulled from, like this one here and this one here. And I can't remember if it shows up in the Norman set as well, but it's good, just like generic Dark Age equipment to strap on. And then, as I mentioned, these 4 sword scabbards for 6 bodies, which I think the suggestion is that the armored guys would get the swords, and then the unarmored guys maybe would get the like knives and smaller equipment, but you can do whatever you like with them. So yeah, very cool set, and I think the real utility in this set is how it blends together with some other Victrix stuff. So I'm going to cut now, I'm going to build some of these straight off the sprue, and I'm going to see how some of these bits blend together with some of my other Victrix kits. Okay, guys, here we go. So I went a little bit off the rails with the kit bashing, and we'll get to that in just a second. But before we do, I wanted to share a couple of observations with you from putting some of these together and looking at this schematic. First of all, down here, don't let this trip you up. I had to read it like 3 times. All this is saying is that any quiver can go with any body. They're just listing out all of the bodies and all of the quivers. So all of the accessories are interchangeable, whereas you can see, again, they're suggesting some heads go with specific bodies. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that their left arm, right arm system, and I realize this is the first kit we've seen from Victrix that uses specific left arms with specific right arms. I think that their system is probably inferior to Wargames Atlantic's, and we've seen that they use like L1 goes with R1, so it's very clear at a glance at the sprue which arms go with which, or which left arm goes with which right arm. Here, it's like A1 goes with A2, right? It is that simple, where the left arm is right next to the right arm in the sequence. And so same thing here, like A3 goes with A4, A5 goes with A6. So if you just stick to that, understand that the left arm and the right arm are always coupled right next to each other numerically. You won't get tripped up, but again, it was a little less clear at first glance. Also, a lot of these heads I had said that I think Victrix is kind of selling themselves short in suggesting that some of these heads must go with some of these bodies. And to a certain extent, I think that's still true. However, I failed to realize that a lot of these heads, like especially these with the longer necks, are specifically designed to go with these cowls that you can see most of the bodies have an option for. And so these necks, especially once you're holding them and trying to put them up against another model, you'll see that like anatomically they don't look correct unless this cowl is on the body as well. So anyway, that's just something else to be aware of. I still think these heads are more interchangeable than this diagram suggests, but again, just a little asterisk there that a lot of these heads are, they require some kind of cowl to go down on the body. So with that aside, couple of other points I wanted to make here. So I had mentioned that I think that this kit is perfectly interchangeable with their Norman infantry set that came before it, and I think this demonstrates that. So on the left hand side here, this is a Norman infantry body from the Norman infantry set, but that's one of the what they call again aerobized heads that come from the Crossbowmen set. So anybody that might want to pick this set up, both because they want a bunch of Crossbowmen and because they want some of the kind of Moorish heads that come with the set to use maybe on their Norman infantry, you can see that they work together just fine. No issues there. And even these are similar enough looking poses. This one's just a little bit more hunched over. I think also you might agree that the Crossbowman kit represents a slight step forward in terms of crispness. Like there's nothing wrong with this one. This is a beautiful sculpt. I've got no issues with it. But you can see that this is the crossbow body on the right, which came a little bit later, and I would submit that the details are a little bit sharper on this one, though the bits are, I think, interchangeable, and stylistically they're very similar. I think that there's just a little bit more crispness in the sculpt on the right. So anyway, food for thought there. What I've done here, I guess let me show you some of the models straight out of the box here. I didn't attach any of the quivers or any accessories or anything like that. I was so obsessed with kit bashing, but yeah, I think these sculpts are really, really excellent. I like these cowl accessories. I think they add a lot of like dimension and depth to the figures. I also like, this isn't something we talked about in prior kits, but Victrix does a really good job of sculpting different body types. Like you can tell this guy's a little bit thicker, right? Like he's not like obese or anything like that, but they have, like in a lot of their Dark Age kits, especially like the Viking one in particular on the command set, there's one guy that is like, he's got like a belly on him, and it even has like a larger head to go with that body. So it's just cool that they do that to add some diversity to your units and your armies. Yeah, really cool poses on these. And this is the one that's the hunched over guy that gave that arrow in the mouth or bolt in the mouth there. And this one is actually more hunched over than I realized he was from, looking at it on the sprue. And this is cool, like this is neat. I'm just not sure I want 6 of these guys in a unit of 36, but it is a very cool dynamic pose. So What I then did, so yeah, excellent kin, lovely sculpting, and I think a great addition, especially if you're building up any Dark Age force, that you could then add some crossbows to other units. And what I did though is I then started just giving everybody a crossbow. Is kind of what happened. So this is a gripping beast Viking herdman body, and I just slapped on one of the sets of crossbow arms from the Norman kit, and then this head is from the Victrix Viking set. And you can see it works just fine, like without any cutting or anything like that. And if I like with green stuff back here, or do some more advanced cutting, I think it would work even better. This is an Oathmark Goblin. Again, there's no cutting here whatsoever. I just slap the arms on, and you can see that is convincing enough, I think. This is cool. So this is actually a Victrix Viking. The head is from the Crossbowmen kit, and then of course the crossbow is from the Crossbowmen kit. But this body is one of the most dynamic poses out of the Viking set. And you can see, once again, with no cutting, I just picked, like, I took a couple of test fits to find one that worked. But you can see, like, out of the box, there's a crossbow arm that fits the Viking set, no problem. So that was cool. How about this one? War Games Atlantic, of their Foot Knights. I happen to have some over on my workbench because I've been putting those together too. And so I just slapped some crossbow arms on this guy. And I think the scale is right. Again, there may be a little bit of cutting here to get these to fit together in a flush way, but yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And even this one, how about this? This is a Perry Foot Knight from their War of the Roses line that I just threw these arms on. This is actually a good demonstration of what I've talked about in the past, that Victrix is slightly more heroic scale than Perry, because you can see, while the Perry sculpting is great, this is a Perry head, Perry body, Victrix arms, and I think that the arms look kind of bulky on this model, but it works right at a tabletop level. I think this would be just fine if you had a whole unit of these based up and painted. So yeah, another really great kit from Victrix. One thing I did want to point out too, just in talking of scale there for a second, is that their Normans, I noticed this in the Norman infantry set too, and I think in part it's because they're so armored, because they have these kind of conical helms that make them slightly taller, and a lot of them have these cowls. But I think their Normans are like big, like not outside of the realm of possibility big. But you can see, like, again, this is a Viking, Victrix Viking on the left-hand side, and this is a Norman on the right-hand side. And this Viking is, like, standing up straight, almost like leaping in pose, and the Norman on the right is kind of hunched over. And you can see this guy, I think the Normans are just big, like, brutish-looking miniatures by comparison to some of their other Dark Age stuff. And again, I like that. I like diversity in body types, body sizes, height, especially if the scale is all still correct. And it is. The Normans are still like the correct scale in terms of proportion of weapons and like belts and stuff like that. They're just big boys, so it's just something to be aware of if you're trying to blend them in. Like these Victrix guys would not, I think, blend very well with like Perrymen. I mean, they do, but they're gonna look kind of hulking by comparison. So just something to be aware of. But again, I think these are excellent sculpts, a fantastic addition to their range. Actually, it's convinced me to pick up their Dark Age archers because the kind of kit bashing potential of this box suggests to me that the Dark Age archers that I think came out right around the same time is going to have even more utility kind of across other sets. So I'll be picking that up here shortly as well. So thanks again for stopping by, and until next time, happy gaming, guys.